being quite tight on time, but let's give them a minute or so.
Muchas gracias. Gracias.
Merci à toi. Merci. Mais, pardon,
Working? Oh yeah, here we go. All right. Looks like, I was told that there are really long lines to get into this room, so I was also very worried that for this particular session the line will be shorter and then I'll feel bad. Great. Maybe we'll kick off. So many amazing sessions at this conference, and here we are in this room. And I suppose there are really a couple of reasons. Either you are the managers and you're wondering, is your time up? Or maybe another alternative, you report to a manager and you're probably wondering the same thing. Is their time up? Right? We'll get to the answer maybe in a few minutes, but first let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story of a software developer, just like many of the people at this conference. His name was Peter Gibbons, and he worked at Initech. But he didn't really like his job. Okay, let's be frank. He truly, truly hated his job. And one of the reasons is he reported to 8 different managers. Can you imagine 8 bosses and just one Peter trying to program his way to the top? So this misery at the office quickly translated into his personal relationship. Things began to unravel, and he was really struggling. He needed to take desperate measures. He needed to put his life back on track. So he signed up for a hypnosis session. He wanted to be hypnotized and emerged a new man. Instead, what happened? The session went terribly wrong. It was a complete disaster. The guy comes in, and the Dr. Swanson, passes out in front of Peter's eyes. He suffers a heart attack. He drops dead. Well, can you imagine being Peter? The guy who was there to cure you dies. How do you feel? It was a cathartic experience, but also a liberating one. He finally understood he needed to take control of his life. He was no longer prepared to tolerate the suppression of the office. There's a lot of drama in this story, wouldn't you say? Yeah? Someone should have made a movie out of it. Well, someone did. Office Space, an iconic film, came out in 1999, and Peter Gibbons spoke for his generation when he said this. It's not that I'm lazy, it's that I just don't care. And you don't look surprised. Let me say that again. It's not that I'm lazy, it's that I just don't care. He's a fictional character. He's not real, but you and I, we are, right? And we want our jobs to have meaning. So what's holding us back? I submit to you, it's the logic we've inherited from the industrial age. It's the hierarchy, the bureaucracy, the command and control logic of running the enterprise. All those ideas, they reside where? They're stuck in the dictionary, in the language that we use. Take the word manager. You've heard that people join companies, but they leave managers. And quick Google search will surely tell you why. My manager is rude, is treating me unfairly, control freak. Well, let's not blame the managers. It's not their problem. They're stuck in the same dysfunctional system that the rest of us. The managers I reported to, they were great, they were competent people, they were good at their jobs. But the problem is the system expects them to command and control. And you know what they do in that system? They try to do exactly that. They try to command and control. And this is clearly not working. And why is it not working? There are really a few megatrends I'll highlight quickly to see where the pressure is coming from. The number one megatrend everyone's talking about, and surely for a reason, is the accelerated pace of technological advancement. Let's make this real. Who remembers the world before social media? Raise your hand. Okay, some of you are not raising your hand. That's because you're 15 years old, or you're on social media now, tweeting about this session. So that's okay then. Who remembers? Keep your hand up if you remember the world before mobile phones. Yeah? Before internet. Before personal computers. Okay, some of you. All right. So every single one of those inventions, they turned the world upside down. But guess what? So did the abacus and the printing press. The problem is, there were 2,000 years between abacus and the printing press. And in our lifetime, we've experienced a handful already. So in that world, it's now been called a VUCA world, the world where there's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And imagine, in this context, can you really forecast anything forward? Can you plan and execute? If you forecast, plan, and execute, that's called strategy. But strategy, as we know it, is dead. Instead, we need to move to iteration and consistent feedback. So the managers, they earn their keep by implementing the strategy. And I wonder, in this new world, if there is space for that. The next mega trend is automation of everything. You've heard the forecasts, and we just said the forecasts don't make any sense anymore, but you have heard them. As many as 2 billion jobs will disappear within a decade. 2 billion jobs is half of the jobs that exist today. So let's make this real as well. Everyone on this side of the room, in the year 2030, you're unemployed. You feeling that? And the rest of you on this side are still working, but maybe wondering if you should have picked a seat on a different side if you're reporting to 8 different bosses, just like Peter. But, whether or not those forecasts make any sense, what is absolutely true and what everyone agrees on is the work that is possible to parse out, the work that is repetitive in nature. That stuff will be automated. It'll be better handled by algorithms and computers and robots. The work that will remain will be creative. They'll require collaboration across teams. And that kind of work doesn't lend itself naturally to management. What else is happening is the millennials, they will soon dominate the workplace. We all know that information is power. And you know what the traditional manager will do with information when they encounter it? They'll hoard it. They'll hold on to it, right? And maybe give it to you on a need-to-know basis. What do millennials do with information? They also know its power, but they'll share it. They sense it very differently. They want to be a hub in a network. They want to be an influencer. So they handle information in a completely different way. So how do you think the hierarchy will survive this kind of attitude? So there's 3 megatrends: the accelerated pace of change, the automation of everything, and millennials coming of age. And some companies, they're really struggling to cope. And they really take half measures. They bring their employees and they say, we're going to be different. We want to empower you. We want you to be creative. But they don't do anything. And those companies are really creating more mistrust and more confusion. But there are companies that are really absolutely getting this right. And Steve Jobs, he really sensed the zeitgeist before everybody else. And he said that it doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. This worked out really well for Apple. It became the first company to become $1 trillion business. First public company. And Spanish economy is $1.3 trillion business. So it's a big deal. Now let's look at another company in Sweden. It's no CEO. It operates as a holacracy. No one's in charge. Okay, let me correct that. Everyone's in charge. If you want anything done, you step up and do it. You organize people around you. You set up this project and you move forward with it. And this is the first real alternative to a hierarchy. There's a company in China called Hire. And when you look at this fridge, does it resemble YouTube in any way? It doesn't, but it has everything to do with the YouTube model. The company operates just like the internet. It's 4,000 micro enterprises that collaborate and compete every which way. This inspired a new term, humanocracy. And what they were able to achieve, they can cut the idea to market by 70%, and they became the biggest appliance maker in the world. So, is the era of management over? Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. There are 3.5 billion people working today, and majority of jobs that exist, they don't require creativity and spontaneity. All that is required is efficiency and consistency. That's what has given us the prosperity we're experiencing today. So tech startups, they get a lot of publicity, but those jobs that are core of what the employment is, they're not really going to change overnight. Another question to consider is we human beings are status-obsessed creatures. How do you forecast your status in a flat organization? How do you even know what your status is? Same goes for difficult decisions. If the decision is really hard, you elevate it to your manager. And at the same time, you resent them for making that decision you asked them to make. So it's a lot of contradictions. But what has been true and remains true is hierarchy and bureaucracy, they come at a cost. Peter Gibbons was a talented programmer, but in a given week, he could only do 15 minutes of real work. You guys are much, much better than that. Maybe you can do a real hour a day. Huh? Is that fair? Maybe an hour and a half on a good day. What do we do with the rest of the time? We're pushing papers, we're following some processes, we're waiting for decisions to come down, and we're just not contributing as much value as we could. And this is clearly a lose-lose situation. The companies where we work, they want the same thing. They want us to bring us our full selves to work. So this lose-lose can't last. We live in the age of disruption, and iPhone disrupted Nokia out of business. Netflix is shaking the movie industry to the core, and the next wave of disruption is coming for organizational designs. It's no longer about products and services. So can the business vocabulary survive those tectonic shifts? I really hope not. What do managers do? They manage. Directors, they direct. Supervisors, they supervise. And what do executives do? They execute. Okay, let's not go that far. But in that world where our business vocabulary is stuck with terms that are perpetuating the system, we really can't move on. So what I suggest, we've invented vocabulary for organizational design, but what I suggest is we retire the term manager completely. We just stop using it. And instead, we hire context curators. What is a context curator? Why does context matter? If you were an automaker a couple of decades ago, how did you compete? You would have to make better cars, cheaper cars, faster cars, right? But if you're an automaker today, are you hardware or are you software? Are you supposed to create better cars and market it to individual consumers, or are you supposed to create a self-driving ecosystem to compete with Silicon Valley? Context is everything. If you miss the context, you end up with a Kodak moment. And no one wants to be in that boat. So that brings us to a duck test. Have you heard of a duck test? If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, must be a duck, right? The test works both ways. If you call something a duck, it will do those things. It will look like one, act like one, and quack like one, right? So if we call people managers, they will continue to do things that don't really work anymore. They don't create as much value. If we go with context curators, we can adjust to that new universe. Just one final thought. So the word manager comes from the word manus, hand, comes from handling things. And the word curator, cure, has to do with helping and caring. Do you remember who did not care for his job? It's Peter Gibbons. If only did he work for a context curator, it would have been a different universe. Thank you.